NATS is a popular message broker that is often used in microservices-based applications. However, as we mentioned in a previous lesson, it's not the only message broker out there, and depending on your use case, team, or requirements, you might want to use a different message broker. Thanks to the Nest.js abstraction layer, we can easily switch between different message brokers without having to make significant changes to our codebase. The client proxy class that we've been using so far is actually an abstract class that, depending on the selected transport strategy, will use a different implementation under the hood. Similarly, we can supply a different configuration object to the connect microservice method, specifying that we want to use a different transport strategy, and the framework will take care of the rest. Of course, in more advanced scenarios, if you rely on some of the features that are specific to a particular transport strategy, message acknowledgement, headers format, context objects, etc., you might need to make some extra changes to your codebase, but that's not the case for us here in our codebase. Great. So in this lesson, for demonstration purposes, we'll switch from NATS to RabbitMQ. To make things even simpler for us, we'll only update Virtual Facility and the Workflows service applications and leave other services as they are. Otherwise, we'd have to make even more irrelevant changes to our codebase, making things unnecessarily overcomplicated and harder to follow. Let's start by updating the Docker Compose YAML file and adding the RabbitMQ service. For simplicity's sake, we'll keep the NATS service as well, just as a reference. Also, let's make sure we make both services, Virtual Facility and Workflows service, depend on the RabbitMQ Docker service right now. Next up, let's declare the RabbitMQ_URL environment variable. Great. So before we start making any changes to our codebase, let's make sure we install the necessary dependencies for RabbitMQ. So in our terminals, let's run npm i, amqplib, and amqp connection manager. Once the installation is complete, let's open up the main.ts file in our Workflows service application and update the connect microservice method to use the RabbitMQ transport strategy. Next, let's navigate to the Virtual Facility application and open up the buildings module TS file. Here, we'll update the client's module configuration to use the RabbitMQ transport strategy as well. Perfect. And once again, just as a quick reminder, we're only updating the Virtual Facility and Workflow service applications. Otherwise, we would have to make a lot of changes to our codebase, and that's not the point of this lesson. Okay, so next, let's also temporarily disable the alarms generator service since we won't be needing it for now. Let's navigate to the alarms generator service file and comment out the interval decorator. With this change, our alarms generator won't be generating new alarms anymore, making our logs easier to follow and read. Let's save our changes and head over to the terminal and run the following command to start everything up. Docker compose up. Once everything is up and running, let's create a new building using curl. As always, you can find this curl command below the course video. And as we can see from our logs, our request was successfully processed and a new building and its workflow were created. Great. So in this lesson, we showed just how easy it is to switch between different message brokers using the Nest.js abstraction layer. We also learned how to use the very popular RabbitMQ as a message broker in our Nest microservice applications. Just remember that Nest does make switching transports much simpler overall, especially in our case, well, we weren't already using hyperspecific methods, etc. from our first transport that we were moving away from, which was NATS. This made the entire process even smoother for us. In cases where you might have done something specific, such as manipulating headers, etc., you just need to spend a little bit of extra time transitioning those to use your new transport. But otherwise, everything else we did here would stay exactly the same.